I'm Traci Austin, your host of the People Strategy Podcast. This show provides interviews with organizational leaders and ongoing coaching experiences that highlight elevating people in organizations through a people strategy roadmap.
Hi, I'm Chad Franson from Rise 25. Today, I am the host of the People Strategy Podcast, where we dive into the latest trends and best practices in talent management and organizational development. This episode is brought to you by Elevated Talent Consulting, a leading provider of comprehensive talent management solutions. Whether you're looking to optimize your recruitment process, enhance employee engagement, or develop effective leadership strategies, Elevated Talent Consulting has the expertise to level up your team. Discover how they can transform your workforce at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. Traci Austin is a certified HR professional with over 2 decades of experience in building HR departments for small businesses from the ground up. Traci is dedicated to creating an environment where every employee can find fulfillment in their work while achieving business outcomes. Her expertise in employee development, performance consulting, and coaching has made her a highly sought-after consultant in the HR field. As a chief strategy consultant and owner of Elevated Talent Consulting, a certified women-owned business, Traci has significantly impacted small businesses and HR professionals. She also hosts the popular podcast, the People Strategy Podcast, which you're listening to now, which reaches thousands of HR professionals and business leaders globally. Hey, Traci, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Chad. It is great to be with you and with Rise 25.
Great. It's great for me to talk to you. It's great for me to be able to talk to you and to have you work with Rise 25. As long as you mentioned that, how did you kind of get connected with us at Rise 25?
Yeah, absolutely. I went through this amazing program called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program out of the Chicago school. And my business advisor, Jaime Martinez, had introduced me to Dr. Jeremy as I had said, hey, at some point, I'm really looking to shift what we are doing with our podcast production. And Jaime had mentioned Dr. Jeremy had gone through the program. And so that is how we got connected. And for any of you small business owners out there, or, leaders that are leading within that, the 10,000 Small Business Program is a game changer.
Okay, awesome. And that's Dr. Jeremy Weiss, for those who aren't familiar with who Dr. Jeremy is. He's one of the co-founders of Rise 25. Hey, today we're going to talk about the People Strategy Roadmap made popular by Elevated Talent Consulting. Could you kind of give me a brief definition of what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way I like to say this is, do you know who you need in what seat inside your organization and when? So often when we get called to work with organizations, it is, Traci, we just need to hire. Well, who do you need to hire? I don't know. Well, do you need a warm body, or do you need a very specific skill set with an outcome getting done in that job that will lead to a business result? They're like that. I'm like, okay, great. How many people do you need? Doing what? By when? And they're like, 6 weeks ago. And I don't know. So that's when we really created this people strategy roadmap, which essentially lays out, based on what your business strategy is and those business results that you're looking for, how do we get there in a way that we're not, running against a wall consistently?
I know there's kind of an analogy that you like to use for a flight path. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what I want you all to envision, right? I want you to envision that fly that keeps going against your kitchen window and bumping against it harder and harder. And I want you to think about this. Think about that fly, and the harder it flaps its wings, the closer it is to its death. That window is clear. We can see out of it, but we can't get out of it. And so often, as we are developing our people strategies, or the way that our people can perform to their highest level inside of the organization, we only know what we know. And we're utilizing the tools that we currently have. And the people strategy roadmap helps us to change the flight path into the open window or the open door, so that we're not working harder to get closer to our death, that we're actually working harder or easier to get a better outcome.
So what are the key elements of a people strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key elements of a people strategy that we see are really looking at what is your business strategy. And so often when I say that, I have folks go, well, what do you mean a business strategy, right? So like what is it that your business is doing to take its product or services to market? And so that's specifically what we're looking at when we look at the business strategy. So understanding what that is. And that could be that you are going to open a new location in Iowa as of January 1st. That's a business strategy in order to get X amount of revenue. So the next element that we have in our people strategy roadmap is understanding what winning looks like, or what are those business outcomes. So, a business outcome may be a 10% year over year revenue growth and a 5% profit growth based on that expansion into Iowa, right? So that business strategy aligned with a business outcome. And what's in the middle of those things is what gets really fun, right? So what is in the middle of that is what our people strategies really are. So now we're going to start to look at what financials do we have to play with to make this business strategy happen? How do we hire our people? So, for example, when we're looking at our hiring strategies, we're saying, all right, our business strategy is we're going to expand into Iowa. Fantastic. How many people do we need to open this operation in Iowa? All right, we need 25 people. Great. So we know we're doing 25 new hires in Iowa. Fantastic. So with that, what else does our organization need? So now we're looking at the business strategy. We're looking at turnover. What's happened with turnover over the last 3 years, the average turnover? So we know in January, we've got 25 hires in Iowa. If we have 10% turnover throughout the rest of the company, historically in January, we know we've got that 10% of our total population that we need to hire for. And if there's any successions that we're planning for, any retirements, any of those planned exits. So that's what we're planning for our hires for January. And if we know that those folks need to be successfully proficient in their role by the start date of that business opening on January 25th, let's say, then guess what? We need to back up and say, we know it takes 6 weeks to recruit and 6 weeks to train. So we actually need to post those positions 12 weeks before that start date of the opening. And that's us planning our people strategy as to what we need to hire based on where our business is going, what our attrition has been, and what our planned retirements are.
So what happens when you post those positions?
So when we post those positions, there's a couple things that typically happen, right? Sometimes it is if we are not in an area where we are known, right? If we're a new commodity, it's going to be harder to hire. So that's just something to think about. But once those positions are posted, now we start moving through our HR processes, which that's our foundation of how do we bring our people in to ensure that we have a fantastic applicant experience and we have a great team experience? Because we know that if we are engaged in the work that we are doing, we're much more likely to perform at a higher level, to get higher profits on the back end for our organization. And guess what? We bring people with us. So once we post those positions, we start bringing folks through that process. And there's a lot of marketing that happens up front of how do we put ourselves out there with those job ads? Who do we know? What are those conversations? And that's all a part of that within our leadership team.
So what goes into a fantastic applicant experience?
Yeah. So when we look at that applicant experience, it is ensuring that we're guiding them through every single step of the process so that they know exactly what's happening and what's happening next, right? So I don't know if you've ever, I'm assuming we've all kind of driven, right? So if as we're driving, let's say we're on a roundabout, the roundabout's kind of telling us where to go and it's guiding us step by step through the process. There's times where we might be on a road and we hit a stoplight where we're stopping and waiting for somebody else to tell us to go. And I use this stoplight versus this roundabout analogy because a great applicant experience takes the person all the way through the process without dropping them off. So sometimes that stoplight, we sit there forever. And let's face it, as HR, sometimes we forget about applicants and we don't get back to them. And that's not fantastic. And that creates a negative employee experience or applicant experience. So we want to create a positive applicant experience by ensuring that we have all of those processes set out, that there's potentially automation within that allows folks to really feel that they know exactly what's coming every step of the way. And if they're not a fit for the organization, we're really clear on that up front. Within the applicant process, it is just, if not more important, to kick people out of the process that aren't a fit as it is to bring the right people in.
Is there a financial strategy that goes along with everything that you've described here?
Yeah, absolutely. And the financial strategies that we're looking at a lot of times have to do with the Inspire portion of our people strategy roadmap. And when we look at Inspire, we're looking at the employees that are currently within our organization. And a lot of this has to do with how are we training folks? How are we bringing them through, the process in our organization? So, a great mentor of mine who I do a lot of work with, Jonathan Reynolds with Titus Talent Strategies, who's been on the podcast in the past. One of the things that Jonathan states is, hey, every 3 years right now, folks are typically looking for a new job. Well, let's offer them a career versus offering them a job. When we can offer them a career, we're restarting that 3-year cycle every month, every 3 months, because we're offering them that career, which means they know exactly within our people strategy roadmap how to go from a, CNA position to a licensed practical nurse position to a BSN position, or they know how to go from a scheduler position to a planner position to a supply chain manager position to a supply chain director position, right? So that when we offer folks careers on exactly how they can grow within the organization, we're setting that people strategy roadmap. And if we're looking at our attrition numbers and our retirement numbers, we know what we need to do and about how long it takes for somebody to grow within the organization so we can train them, mentor them, and coach them. And there's the financial aspect of that because, yes, that's additional costs within that, but it's also saving us on the recruitment piece of it. So when we know where can we invest additional training dollars also based on when service delivery is happening, we can really plan that. Let me give you another example of this. We work with a lot of landscape companies. We know that busy season is really March through about July. That's their busy season. So we're going to do a lot of the training in the off season. Yet, from a financial strategy, when does all the money come in? During the busy season. Yet, can we invest in training in our people during the busy season? No, because we don't have the people resources then. So the people strategy roadmap allows us to plan out the financials and the budgeting of items along with the people resources as to where we're going and how we're growing to elevate our people and to recruit the best people to and for us.
Maybe you've already touched on it, but I know you have something called the people strategy staffing plan. Can you kind of detail what that is?
Yeah. So that staffing plan, we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I love this question because that staffing plan actually has us lay out exactly what's happening as compared to budget numbers. I actually spent, 3 hours doing this yesterday for a manufacturing client of ours they're growing 300% year over year. We're adding on their third shift in their production right now. We just did second shift a couple months ago, and there's additional capital CapEx projects that are happening. So as we're planning out their people strategy or their staffing plan, we're looking at every area and, okay, how many folks do we need in this area? What's the growth potential? Do we have folks that want to move from second shift to third shift, so that we know exactly who we need to hire on what shift, not just for the third shift start, but also knowing, hey, here's some of those key milestones that are coming up within the next year that will be additional hiring. So with that, we're creating some coaching, mentoring, training for folks to elevate to the next level position right now, knowing that a year from now, they're probably going to be ready for it. And if we can prepare them for it, we're also staffing for that next level position that will become available within the organizational growth.
So how does that kind of, offering a career rather than a job, how does that kind of affect the hiring process?
So it depends upon the level of position, I would say, that's coming in. The other thing that I would say is that when we're offering a career rather than a job, we're bringing in a different type of an individual, even for our light industrial positions. So what do folks want when everybody's wearing WIIFM across their forehead? What's in it for me, right? So when we can look at that and say, what is it that you actually want? No, it's not what management wants. It's what do you want? Because if I know what you want, and I have a match for that, guess what? That's two sides of the same coin. We're going to be moving in the same direction. If I know what you want and I have a match for it, we can start to do that, which means you're going to be much more engaged in the work that you're doing, much more committed to the organization. That also means we're going to take that time up front to ensure that you're a right fit for the job. And as we're creating that career laddering, and this is, one of those areas where it's different when we're offering a job. I'm going to make sure you're a fit for this job. If I'm offering a career ladder, knowing in 3 years you're going to get to this higher level position, you may not be an exact fit for this job that you're going to apply for right now. However, you have to have that experience in order to move here. And if we both know that and know I'm going to learn this over the next year to get to that next level or 2 levels up position, we're on the same page of it, and that's a career versus just a job.
And most people are able to kind of focus in on what they need to do to get through that time and stay engaged.
Professional positions, 100%. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we're talking about professional positions, that is 100% there. And guess what? We still have folks that we need in every level of the organization. Some are never going to want to go beyond a forklift driver. That's totally fine. If you're an amazing forklift driver, we need you and you provide a phenomenal service to our organization. And when you can do that safely and get things out the door on time, guess what? That's phenomenal. That's okay. So it's knowing who your people are, which ones want to grow and that growth plan for them, and which ones don't. And seasons of life have a really huge influence on that. Some of us are in seasons of life that we're like, you know what? I'm good to coast for a couple of years. Others are like, no, I'm ready to grow. Let's go. So knowing where folks are at has a big impact on what they want and meeting them where they're at.
What about outcomes analysis regarding this roadmap?
Yeah. So when we look at that outcome, it is always a beautiful thing to know what winning looks like before we start. Right? Because guess what our brains do? It's never good enough if we didn't write it down and have something that we're shooting for. So when we do those outcomes review, we're really looking at what did we say was the intention and the outcome up front, and really looking at that and going, is that outcome actually reasonable? So often when we create a people strategy roadmap with folks, there's a couple of things that happen is that they will line out what a business strategy is along with a business result. So let me give you an example. Expand operations into Iowa with a start date, in January. Their financials at that point in time this is the lowest cash flow that they've had due to the purchase and expansion costs. And January is the lowest sales period of the year. So what's the impact of that? We don't have a ton of training money before those folks are actually bringing in revenue based on what they're selling, right? So if we don't bring them in with that 6-week training window, do we create an issue and an impact on the business outcomes? Absolutely. So those business outcomes that this organization had was to increase year over years by sales by 10% in Q1. So as we looked at that and started kind of poking holes in it, it was okay. So if we're going to increase 10% year over year in Q1, do we have enough time to do that? Do we have the people that are actually trained to do it? With the financial implications of what's there, have we set ourselves up to actually be successful? And when we look at that higher roadmap aligned to this, they started hiring a little bit later than potentially what they could have done to ensure that that training was 100% there, or moving folks from other parts of the organization into that geographic area. So as we look at outcomes, I love looking at outcomes to begin with, to poke holes in it, to say, what are all the things here that could go wrong so that we can shift our strategy to still hit our outcomes? And that is so much of what we do with our clients.
So when there's like a low amount of training money, how do people stay satisfied with the potential outcomes, knowing that that's going to be kind of a roadblock or maybe a speed bump?
They're making a choice, right? So we have to make a choice of what do we want this to look like. There's ways to train differently. There's ways to mentor differently. We can pull folks in from different parts of the organization. There may be, other types of organizations in that geographic area, right? So we're just going to look at what are all those options there. And if we believe this is going to, halt the success, what are the options that we have to still hit that result? And, that's where that critical thinking and problem solving come in within that leadership team of really thinking through it based on, the multiple competing priorities that are around the table from finance and ops and HR and the execs, et cetera, right? So we're looking at that from a 360-degree view.
How can our audience learn more about their own people strategy roadmap?
Absolutely. So, we are offering a people strategy roadmap session to our audience. So if you'd like to learn more about that, there is a Calendly link that will be in the show notes. We also have a full 1-hour webinar where we really walk through this with the key questions that we ask within each of those 7 steps. So if that's something you're interested in, once you request that Calendly meeting, you will get a link to that webinar. And we're also, starting our team retention program, which is an 8-week leadership program for mid-level leaders that are leading departments. And this is our first module. We're diving very deep into it, then doing some coaching around it. So that will begin on July 16th of 2024. And if you're listening way after that, we'll be offering this program about 3 times a year.
Let me ask you this. If people don't take advantage of this, based on your experience with past clients, what are they, if you've thought about it, what are they often missing that you bring to the table?
Yeah, so often we're doing this like just-in-time knee-jerk hiring, which means that we are hiring warm bodies that typically turn over very quickly, or they start, in a way, poking holes in our boat, right? So, nobody wants our business to be sabotaged, and we want to ensure that we're really looking at those kind of 4 areas of engagement. And when we don't plan for the right people at the right time in our organization, it creates additional stress on key members of our team that are high performers that tends to lower that performance. And so, we're really looking to say, how do we increase the productivity and the engagement and the want to be at work for our team? And we do that by thoughtfully planning what that is. So we have a win for every team member based on what their personal goals are, a win for the team as a whole, because it's really fun to work on a team where everyone is aligned together, and for the organization where we're hitting those metrics, and for our clients. Our clients love when we are hitting that and at the top of our game for them, because they're like, this is so much fun. And that's exactly what we're doing. When business is fun and we can get amazing results, we all win.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Traci, it's been great to talk to you. Is there anything you'd like to mention as we close out here about the People Strategy Roadmap?
I think the only thing that I'd mention is I'd love to chat with you. So if you want to book a time on my calendar for that conversation and or join our team retention program, we'd love to have you join us and really dig deeply into this along with several other topics. And I know, Chad, we're talking again next month about the employee value proposition, which is a part of the People Strategy Roadmap, where we're really looking at and saying, why would somebody want to work for your organization? And they're hearing about it before they ever have a job to apply for.
Okay, well, I will certainly look forward to talking to you about the employee value proposition. And it's been great to talk to you today. Thanks so much for having me, Traci.
Thanks, Chad.
So long, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to connect with you. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Traci, Traci Austin, and at our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you'd love to learn more about our process, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your feedback with us through a review. Have a fantastic day.